Okay, so this one by popular request is going to be about. I'll change that so that put the defrosters on. So this one is going to be about weaponized memory, which not sure if that's the best term. I can't think of any others. So typically, especially in horror media, I feel like this doesn't get used as much, or maybe it gets used in written media a lot more. It's one of those things that's harder to show without access to a character's internal monologue. So it works better in print, I feel like. Or I could also see it. I could see it working in video games, but you lose access to certain abilities, moves, features, items, like whatever, as your character forgets them. So that could actually be an interesting concept, like for an inventory management system. Like, you can only remember so much, so you have to, as the player, have to pick and choose what the character even remembers they fucking have. So like, maybe you have all the items, or you have everything from the start of the game, but you've only got so much working memory. Maybe you can get more as the game goes on, but you only have so much working memory, and you can remember more of what you have at a given time. Just an idea. That's for use. If somebody wants to use it, I don't care. I make no claim to it officially. So particularly in horror movies and stuff, like, that's where a lot of these concepts kind of end up. But I haven't seen a whole lot of movies or shows or stuff personally that use this kind of concept. Where I have seen it is shows like Magnus Archives. It shows up in SCP articles here and there. But I mean, it's a core tenet of how the Foundation maintains control in the SCP universe, isn't it? With amnestics, cognito hazards, anti-cognito hazards, memes and anti-memes, all that kind of stuff. It gets really wibbly, doesn't it? So there's a really classic SCP is 055. It's something contained in a 5x5x5 room, and nobody knows what the fuck it is, because as soon as you go in, you can look at it, you can measure it, you can test it, you can do whatever you want to it. But as soon as you look away from it, or at least more commonly leave the room, you don't remember it at all. You can write it down, you can write a report, you can file the report, but nobody will remember the report. Even, I think there's a full write-up of it on the Foundation's internal database. You know, not exactly the one we see as readers, but it's a full description of what the thing is. But like, you're going through the list, like, say you're a researcher and you're just looking at the database, like, you see it, and like, oh, you click on 055, you read it, and you're like, oh shit, I should go look at this. And as soon as you close out the document, you forget what the fuck you were doing, or you forget all about it. So, but one of the main things about it is you can't remember what it is, but a researcher figures out you can remember what it isn't. So there's little, like, scrawlings in the notes of the document and stuff like 055 is not round, it is not researcher insert name here, that kind of thing. That's the only information about it that can be retained. Negative information that it isn't. So that's one of those concepts. And then there's the flip side of that. What's usually seen as the flip side of that article. I want to say it's 679. I don't think it is. I'm probably wrong. But the crux of it is I think it's it's contained in a facility by itself. But the description is data expunged. And then there's just logs of people trying to do stuff and contain it. And, it's one of those articles that's sort of not interesting on its own, but it gets used in a lot of other articles. It was used in, I think, 2 different end of the world scenarios to reset reality. I forget what the first one was, but the second time I recall it being used was in SCP-5000. You take 055 and you throw it in to 579. 679? Fuck, I'm getting the wrong number wrong now. So you throw one into the other, and their anti-memetic, non-existent properties conflict with each other, and reality resets. 5000 also has a really interesting take on 055, in that the researcher that's carrying it physically to 679, if that's the right number, carrying it to the other anti-memetic anomaly. It's in a briefcase, and every once in a while he opens the briefcase and he's further along his journey, and he is filled with resolve, and he feels better. But it works. It loses effectiveness the more and more he does this. So there's that. But he feels motivated to continue to do this over and over. And what's more, one of the main cruxes of 5000 is that there's Foundation researchers found something in the collective human consciousness that they realized is not human, is fundamentally antithetical to humanity, and it's never fully described. But the Foundation a lot of the Foundation rids themselves of this entity, idea, concept, emotion, whatever it is. And in doing so, they become borderline emotionless. They can no longer feel pain. They change the Foundation's mission statement from protecting humanity to annihilating humanity. They release every entity they have that can cause widespread destruction, and in particular, a captured Foundation agent starts to talk like 682. It calls people disgusting. It just hates them all. That's the only emotion that they can feel anymore, hate and disgust. So, and it's also very clearly signified that whatever this entity is, whatever this idea was that was removed from human psychospace, is bad. It's negative, it's evil, it's whatever. It's infected humanity for its own purposes. So the Foundation got rid of it. And there's a scene in 5000 where that researcher that's carrying 055, he bears witness to all these anomalies that are wreaking havoc on humanity, like all these different things. They're broadcasting 076 on every TV, so it just wanders around eating people, that kind of thing. But it looks up into this sky, and there's this thing stretched us across the sky like a face. And Foundation personnel are actively kind of fighting it. Like, they're shooting it, they're throwing other anomalies at it. It's like, why are they fighting this stretched face? And it's implied that that is heavily connected to whatever this entity is that they removed from their own psychospace. But then it's also implied that this entity is manipulating this researcher through 055 to reset reality back to a more comfortable status quo for it and humanity. Mostly for it, because it's not very comfortable for humanity, I guess. So, and then of course that researcher dies in the end, and his corpse ends up in Foundation custody in the reset reality. But that reset reality's version of that researcher is fully alive over at, isolated research base, fucking whatever. So now there's 2 copies of this guy. One of them's dead in a total I forget what the term was, like total isolation suit. He is wearing a suit that like isolates him completely from perception of anything. So, but it's a whole thing. It's a fucking great article that touches on a lot of these concepts, and there's a lot of mind wiping and inception and idea implanting and memory removing in tons of different articles. Like, there's another, I can't remember some of the main concepts, but like there's a tale series besides the anti-mimetics division. I almost don't want to even get into that. That's a fucking long one. But that one deals with the cosmic starfish from Fifth-ism, and it's an aggressive meme complex that anyone that learns of it, it annihilates. So they have to do research on it in an isolated chamber. And then when they leave the chamber, like they leave their research in the chamber, and when they leave, they have to wipe their own memories. So that's fun. So like, how do they even know they're trying to research this? But fuck, what was my other train of thought? Oh, there's another tale. It's set up almost like a international like spy cat and mouse type thing, where like an O5 is trying to track down other O5s and eliminate them, but they're all so good at hiding from each other, they have to take what's the term? It's like the opposite of an amnestic. Nestics. They have to take nestics to boost their ability to remember, to counteract amnestics and memory wiping effects. Problem is, these nestics are very toxic in a lot of other ways, so you can only do so much of them. And it's I can't remember what it was. It might be an 01 proposal. I think it is. If I ever find it, maybe I'll throw it in the comments of this video or something. But that's one of the things. But going back in the Magnus archives, there is one of the 14 fears is based all around that. It's based around madness and not being able to trust your own mind. It's commonly called the distortion or the spiral. And it has a central avatar named Michael that shows up very often in the first half of the show. And one of the main things about it is he says he does not lie, and usually he doesn't. He lies by omission, he lies by distraction, that kind of lying, but he never outright utters a falsehood, more or less. Because if he does, it's damaging to itself, because he is not a he is an it. In the grander sense of the word, not like a gender identity sense. The spiral is an it because it is not a person, it is not an identity. The spiral cannot have an identity because it is the throat of delusion incarnate, is what it claims. But it does not lie. It lies about lying. It's a whole thing. But most of the stories about it are most of the people that it claims and that it takes. It kind of, it's all about this memory manipulation. Like people that aren't there, that were never there. I feel like the distortion actually doesn't have a lot of episodes to it. But one of the earliest ones, there's a character named Helen. And she is partially claimed by the spiral, and by claimed as a victim, as a food source, because that's what these entities do. But what happens to this poor woman is she is a realtor that's showing off a mansion or some large house or something. And she notices a door that she didn't realize was there. This is a big concept with the spiral. Doors that weren't there before, tunnels that weren't there before, hallways that weren't there before. And then when you go down them and turn around, they're gone. And you see a blank wall. That's a really overt version of this. But, she gets trapped in a labyrinth of hallways, doors, and blank walls. She manages to find her way out. She comes to the Magnus Institute. She gives a statement. That's when we learn of all this, because that's how you learn about anything in the Magnus archives, through statements. But she does that. She talks to John, the main character. She gives a statement, blah, blah, blah. It's all recorded. And then she gets up to leave. She exits through a door, and then Michael shows up. He sits down to taunt and talk to John. And John realizes that the door Helen left through is no longer there, because it was a door belonging to the spiral, because of course it was. And then she's lost. She's gone. She's eaten. And that's how those types of things work, or that's how the spiral works. Now, to keep on theme of this channel, how does that work with D&D? Well, one of the main concepts here is that, in media, in anything, the audience is always kind of privy to this. And there's other movies, that you can kind of play with. I think the movie Memento used this kind of concept a lot, but the audience is always really aware that the character is losing their memories, even if the character is only kind of aware. Because, a character isn't necessarily going to be fully aware that they lost their memories. It's just, that feels like something I should know, And this is especially true in something like D&D, because some players will have trouble not metagaming, not taking their knowledge and having their characters act on things they know as players, but the characters wouldn't know. Some players, I feel like this is true in our table, we get a little too far away from it, and we try to act almost purely on character knowledge, when there's certain things we overly separate. There's things that a character might reasonably know, but we kind of push it and be like, no, I can't think of an explicit reason for the character to know this, so we're not going to act on it. But in something like D&D, there's this really popular monster of the False Hydra, which I've never run and I've never encountered as a player. But that seems really tricky to try to run, because the DM effectively gaslights the players and says, no, that character was never here. No, that character doesn't exist. No, your notes are wrong. So that can be really tricky to run in D&D, I feel like, but as long as everybody picks up what the DM is putting down. So maybe I'll think about this more and make another video about this kind of concept, but that's all I got for you today.